Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. Our featured guest tonight is a legendary BC broadcaster and journalist who has been breaking down barriers in this province since the 1970s, being the first Canadian broadcaster of South Asian descent. She's interviewed rock stars from Mick Jagger to Jimi Hendrix. She's an Order of British Columbia recipient, the founder and CEO of Spice Radio, where she still hosts the talk show Gupshup Mondays to Fridays, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. She's produced and hosted television programming for Shaw and Omni, including Women in Focus. The First Lady of Canadian radio, she is Shushma Datt. And this conversation is brought to you by Pacific Sands Beach Resort in Tofino, laid-back luxury, as beachfront as it gets. Shushma, what an honor. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Well, great to be here. And I'm so pleased that you asked me to come.
Of course. You're a legend. I got to ask you, though, when we think about representation in media, racial representation, or just any sort of diversity, as the first Canadian of South Asian descent to be a broadcaster in this country, why is representation important?
I think representation is important if anybody cares about it.
Okay.
When people don't care about it, representation doesn't mean anything.
Right.
The Canadian broadcasting industry never felt that they had to give credit to anybody who was not white. And so if you look at, I'm talking about way back in the 70s when I first came here, I wanted to work with the CBC because I had come from BBC.
Yeah.
And I thought, they would be standing there with open arms saying, hey, Shushma is here. But it didn't work that way.
Really?
Although I was a studio manager. But I must say at that time, I don't think CBC had a studio here. They didn't have. They had an office, small office on Albany Street. So I didn't get a job as a studio manager. I'm a qualified studio manager. I can. Well, these are all digital boards. But if they
back
were not,
then, yeah.
I could have set up a studio.
Right.
Balance music. But I didn't get a job like that. So then I had to go into my own cultural background, South Asian. So maybe I could do something for the South Asian community. Although it was a very small community, but there was nothing for them.
Right.
And
so I guess that's my next question. Maybe I should reframe this. What is the value of having a representative media?
I think the value is there, right? Because whichever community we look at, although they have chosen this country to be their home, but they do have an affiliation with the country that they have left. So usually what they bring with them is the cultural aspect, nothing else, right? They can't bring anything else.
Right.
Culture is theirs. So that's something that nobody else owns. They own it.
Right.
So to be able to be free in celebrating their own cultural events, etc., and their language, I think that's where it is important. And nowhere else, really.
Now, obviously, you've seen this industry evolve throughout the decades.
Yes.
So do you think we're at a time and space now where Canadian media does value representation, where we do think that it matters?
In a way. But still, I think when I talk about non-white people and talk about women, very little representation. Do you know that there are not that many women who are owners of radio stations or who are
I know one. I know of one.
or are owners of media companies?
Sure, yeah.
Maybe they have inherited, which is good, I'm glad. But I feel that women don't get the opportunity to be able to work the way men do.
What do you mean by that? Let's dig into that a little bit.
So, say for example, a man wants to start a business, like in our own community.
Sure.
For example, I am the only woman who owns a radio station. We have 4 other radio stations, all owned by men. Why couldn't another woman come up and own a radio station? Because I guess we belong to a community which is very patriarchal. But then the whole world is patriarchal. Well, I am sorry, there are 4 people here, 3 are men.
That's right. Well, Nina stepped out, in fairness.
Okay, all right, yes. Yes.
Yeah, yes. Okay. But it feels like at least we're pointed in the right direction.
No,
Certainly
you're right.
when you watch television or listen to the radio, there are more diverse voices, right?
I am sounding too negative. I shouldn't be like that.
You can sound off on this show, no problem.
But you know what? I mean, it's so different from when I came here in the 70s to now. When I look at global CHEK, I find our people on there. I find other people who are of Chinese background or Filipino background or African background. And it sort of gives, Canada is supposed to be a country of what? Multicultural?
Yes, that's one of our values. That's correct.
So then if our value is multicultural, then we all should be multicultural.
Right.
In every aspect of the business, every aspect of life, every aspect of being.
Now, you talked about ownership of media companies, but I also feel like even when it comes to talent or journalism, there's some spaces that are still very white dominated. I think about the press gallery at the BC legislature, which is almost all white, if not all white.
Yes.
I think about certain op-ed spaces in newspapers, particularly national newspapers, which is still not representative. It still feels like there's a lot of work to be done.
I think people who are not white work very hard to be amongst them. And the journey is so uphill that either they get burnt out or they do not give other people an opportunity, not an opportunity, other people in, and they want them to not be disappointed as they are. So they wouldn't talk about their profession in such beautiful way,
right?
Because they feel that it's a thankless sort of a job,
yeah.
I mean,
now in my career here in media, I feel like I've been somewhat fast-tracked, so I feel very privileged and fortunate. But when I do talk to people of color who are journalists and they're starting out, they feel like they keep hitting a wall where they're trying to pitch certain stories or even the same stories, but from different angles.
That's right.
And they're getting shot down or, there's no interest for this.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for a young journalist who has a different background?
I think, you have to be passionate about what you're doing. And if you're passionate like you are, you go ahead and if you work hard and you with single-mindedness go towards your goal, I know it might take long, but you will get there.
That's a promise. That's a Shushma guarantee.
I got there. I wanted to. When I came here, I mean, I used to do program for CJVB 1 hour a day, and the community was growing, and I wanted to own my own radio station. I made it happen.
You did, yeah.
So you have to dream, and the universe is waiting. Come on, and I will make sure that you get what you want.
I love that so much. Before I let you go, I have to ask you, you have interviewed so many legendary rock stars. You've got to meet so many of them. When you look back at your career, and I know you're still very active in your career, but when you look back at those musicians and rock stars, who is your favorite? Who stands out?
Oh my God, all of them. Because
you have to name one, Shushma. I'll give you two if you want.
In politics, I think Mrs. Gandhi was an amazing interview.
Yeah.
And in music, I think I didn't get to talk to Cliff Richards. I did talk to George Harrison. He was my favorite.
Okay.
And I sat down with him, and he didn't even look up. He was so shy.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he talked.
One of the biggest rock stars in the world.
I know.
Yeah.
Amazing. I whosoever I talk to, I just love them because there's so much I learn from them. Even talking to you. I mean, your shirt, it's just throwing me off completely.
That's why I wore it.
There's a story behind it.
I just got it in Hawaii when I was there. That's the story. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Shushma, I have to say this is an honor and a privilege, and I want to thank you for everything you've done. You have really broke down barriers for a lot of people, including myself. So thank you so much for everything that you've contributed to this country, and thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you for inviting.
Absolutely. Folks, she paved the way for people like me. She's a BC media pioneer. She is, of course, Shushma Datt. Make sure you tune in to Spice Radio, especially on weekdays, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. for her show, Gup Shup. Thank you so much to Pacific Sands Beach Resort in Tofino for supporting local conversations. Now up next, it's just me, and I have a few things I want to say. Stay tuned.